you can't, when you're manufacturing, really any business, like, people being more efficient, like, you can only say, do it faster, do it better for so long. You got to also back it up with like, hey, here's the tool to do it. And that's what I think the way to like integrate AI into your business, instead of like looking at it to replace people, like help people be able to do their jobs, easier, more efficiently with utilizing AI as opposed to AI replacing them.
Are you a scaling SaaS founder? Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those you don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where business is like working on a laptop. It's all about staying charged, running the right programs, and not overheating under pressure. Anybody ever overclock their life? I think I've been there. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I hope you to be SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. Imagine a world where houses aren't built brick by brick, but layer by layer, printed like a giant 3D model, cutting costs, reducing labor, and solving housing shortages faster than ever. Sounds futuristic? It's already happening. In this episode, we're diving into the groundbreaking world of 3D home printing with someone who's leading the charge in revolutionizing the construction industry with robotics, AI, augmented reality, and of course, software, and maybe a little hardware to go with it. You'll hear how this technology, which operates like a concrete soft serve machine, is eliminating the need for traditional framing, slashing construction costs by 20% and more, and speeding up build times nearly 40%, all while maintaining durability and sustainability. But this isn't just about a cost cutting gimmick. We're exploring how 3D printed homes could be a game changer in addressing the global housing crisis, providing affordable housing, scalable solution for regions that are struggling with shortages, whether that's here in the US or abroad. We'll also talk about how smart tech and augmented reality are making this process even more seamless, reducing training barriers and opening up possibilities for builders worldwide. Absolutely incredible. But the vision doesn't just stop at homes. From storm shelters to commercial buildings, this technology has the potential to reshape the entire construction landscape. If you're curious about the future of housing, innovation, and real estate, or how technology is solving massive societal challenges, this episode is one you won't want to miss. Let's dive in or build up. Our expert guest last Thursday was Tammy Reiss, creator of the Learn to Lead framework. She shared how founders can become confident, collaborative leaders. From empowering teams to helping them make decisive calls, Tammy's leadership playbook is helping tech executives worldwide level up without burning out. And our founder last week was Daniel Borba, founder and CEO of Spark Portal. He revealed how the video as a service model is making it easier for SaaS and B2B brands to scale video content production and drive sales through story driven, short form marketing. Absolutely fascinating. Both of those, video as well as the Learn to Lead framework. It's outstanding. So if you missed either one of those episodes, go back and check them out. My guest today is Lance Thrailkill, CEO of All Metals Fabricating and co-founder of Print3d Technologies. Known for pushing the boundaries of manufacturing innovation, Lance has been featured in Industry Week, ECI, Job Boss for leading the charge on automation, robotics, and Industry 4.0. Now, through Print3d Technologies, he's turned his sights towards solving the affordable housing crisis layer by layer with large-scale 3D home printing. Whether it's driving tech adoption on the factory floor, which is pretty awesome, or building a more resilient future through AI and concrete, Lance is reimagining what's possible in American manufacturing and construction, and also globally. Welcome, Lance Thrailkill. Hey, Lance, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
You're the third generation owner of All Man. Try that again. You're the third generation owner of All Metals Fabricating. What was it like stepping into a company with such deep roots, and how did you shape its future?
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky when you have, especially when you have several people tenured over 40 years, and
Yeah.
you're coming in and big target on your back. and everybody's looking for a reason not to like you. And I think that I didn't know a ton about. I worked in a couple of summers out in the shop, but I didn't know a ton about metal fabricating, and the people all around me were certainly the experts. And so while I had ideas on how to move us forward and improve, I really had to ask a lot of questions and lean on them for that type of thing, which really is, I always say, moving into a new position, like ignorance is actually a gift, because if
Yeah.
you come in thinking that you know everything, you're not going to be received well, especially in an organization with a rich history. And so it forces you to come in and ask a lot of questions and lead through questions. And you may have ideas of things you want to do, but you can also often get people to that place by asking the right questions. And so I found that to be very helpful. You look at how Jesus led, and he's one of the greatest leaders of all time. And
Yeah.
he led by asking people questions. He didn't tell them what to do. He'd ask them a question that helped them realize what the answer was. And yeah, I think that was a great thing, actually. And that's some of my advice to young leaders out there, is just, even if you think you got it all figured out, just come in acting like you don't, and asking a lot of questions, and help people. If you have an idea, help them come to the realization on their own, because people only buy into things they help create.
That's a really savvy answer. And a lot of companies don't make it past the second generation, let alone third and beyond. But then what you've done is really taken that and taken it to the next level. And I think a lot of founders struggleize with modernizing a legacy business and at the same time respecting the history. Absolutely. But how did you introduce automation and industry 4.0 into all metals without disrupting the core values?
Yeah, I think that so coming in, everybody has core values, right? But that hadn't been something that my grandfather and dad had really formalized. But innovation was very much a spirit of my grandfather and my dad. They were always looking for ways to do things better. And even we bought our first laser in 2000, which is right kind of when they first started becoming a big thing in fabricating. And my grandfather their innovative spirit was there. So that certainly helped. And I received some really good advice. I have a master's in accounting and CPA license. And I tell people, don't tell anybody that, but just said it on the podcast. It's public news now. But so anyways, the CFO said, the best advice I can give you is to find an area of your business to improve, attack that, go all in on that. And then once it's complete, move on to the next thing. And
Yeah.
so that was the approach I took. And I don't even know who it was that said that to me, but it's always stuck with me. And so I just looked at little wins. First, it started with something as simple as barcode scanning to get into. We had a time entry system where people were like punching in their times, and it was creating all these errors. And so just looking for anything to gain efficiency. I became obsessed with efficiency, and that really helps people do their jobs more easily, right? So it's like I would
Yeah.
approach it about what's a way to make your job easier. And so I really came at it from that approach, and the big investments in automation and stuff started to follow after quite a bit of momentum. But little wins, even just like fully utilizing your ERP system. I think that's, if such thing even exists, right?
Yeah.
Because there's always more bells and whistles than you use. But that was something I really focused on, was like, what tools do we have available to us that we're not already using? And then it became obvious as automation became more available. Initially, it was a lot more focused on OEMs, original equipment manufacturers. And so it's easy to set up an automated plant when you're running the same parts all day, every day. But when
Sure.
you're doing 300 to 500 different jobs a month for,
Wow.
all different customers, different batch sizes, it's much more difficult. And the change in the technology to making it more user friendly for job boss, which is for job shops rather, was key. And it really timed well for us at least, with the narrative of reshoring. When Trump first came into office in his previous term, that was a big hype. And so what happened back in the earliest 2000, a lot of the high volume manufacturing went overseas to China.
Sure.
And then through some of that narrative, it started coming back. And so by having automation, you could win higher volume jobs, which everybody wants, right? It's just, you want to be able to run a lot of the same part. That's easy money. And really it goes back to my methodology would be, I would take the lead of that department. So let's say the laser cutting where we first started. And the lead of that department would get to fly all over the country to go see the newest, coolest machines and what's available to them. And I always tell this every purchase we make. I tell the lead, I'm like, hey, you pick which one you think is best, and I'm your fall guy. So if it doesn't go well, it's my fault. But if it goes great, then you get the credit. And
Wow.
you've got people that are, making $50,000 to $80,000 a year, making multi-million-dollar decisions. So you got to be there next to them. But that goes back to people buying to what they help create. So by
Yes.
not making, you can't just go pick some new machine and say, here, figure this out. That's not a very good, not a successful methodology. So getting buy-in from the team is always key, and introducing anything new.
It's really smart. I love that they're involved in the decision-making process, because then they own it. They really have an investment in making it work because they know they're the ones that picked it.
Exactly.
It's very cool. I think a lot of people fear automation replaces jobs, especially, I mean, there's a lot of talk with AI now. How do you balance technology adoption with workforce development?
It really starts with how you care for your people. And so if you're not treating your people good in the first place, then they're going to have a tough time believing that you're not out trying to replace them. And fortunately, my grandfather and dad had laid the foundation for that. One of our core values is we care more, and so we care more for our employees, and our employees care more for our customers. And so what I always say, and I continually remind them, is automation is not a replacement of humans. And it's actually, for us, it's even job security. And what I mean by that is manufacturing can be very cyclical, of course, as any business can. And what most shops do is they'll hire layoff to respond to the market. With automation, you can ramp up production and then you just don't run it lights out. You know what I mean? Lights out meaning after hours.
Right.
And that just reminding people of that, it starts with laying the groundwork of caring for them. That's not to say I don't think AI won't replace jobs, but it really creates some new opportunities.
Yeah.
That's another thing that we want people to be able to do their job more efficiently, more effectively, and technology can help them do that. And you can't, when you're manufacturing, really any business, like people being more efficient, like you can only say do it faster, do it better for so long. You got to also back it up with, hey, here's the tool to do it.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the way to integrate AI into your business, instead of looking at it to replace people, help people be able to do their jobs easier, more efficiently with utilizing AI, as opposed to AI replacing them.
And that makes a lot of sense. And it goes right along with what you're saying, just being able to ramp production up and down. And it opens up new markets as well, because it's not just the big jobs where you're doing a whole bunch of the same thing, but you can do some of the smaller ones, you can do some of the medium ones, that kind of thing. Mix it up. And you're talking about, you said 300 to 500 jobs a month. That's pretty significant. Not a lot of
Yes.
places can handle that kind of volume with that kind of variance.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's being flexible is critical in our business. And so, yeah, that's definitely something we continue to preach, especially with people's demands changing. Oh, this job gets pushed out, this job gets pulled in. And it's like, you got a bunch of craftsmen which is a personality profile, like out on the floor, like they want to do what they're working on until they're finished and then move on to the next thing. And so you got to remind people, like in manufacturing and really any job, you got to be flexible.
Yeah.
And certainly the technology helps that, because the quicker the changeover you can do, the easier. Whereas in past with automation, setup time would be massive. And being able to do quick changeovers is a big part of that.
You've taken all of the manufacturing experience, the accounting experience, rolled it together, and you got from sheet metal fabrication to 3D printed homes, which I think is fascinating technology. Tell me about printed technology. What inspired you to co-found that?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer of investing in people, not a product. And so the reason I lead with that is my family had been investing with Craig Pettit, my co-founder and business partner in Print3d Technologies, since the early 90s, in his residential real estate portfolio. And he was looking to anticipate the next 2008, if you'd have it, or whatever the market changes.
Sure.
And so he was always we started in subprime lending, then went to rentals, then RV parks and flipping. And also he's always pivoting the business. So he bought a 3D home printer in 2019. And I was like, okay, cool. So just getting updates from him. And in 2021, he printed the 7th and 8th house in America. Finally, it took him about a year plus to get the thing even running. And I'd been, at this point, I'd built a couple homes, is actually in the process of losing a home to mold, a new construction house to mold, and my family getting displaced.
Wow.
And then I'm learning simultaneously about what Icon is doing, and I'm seeing how big of an opportunity is there, and I'm experiencing firsthand how horribly inefficient the construction industry is.
Yeah.
I'd be building this house. I'm like, why is that light switch not in the right place? Like, it's already sheetrocked and painted. Who's going to pay to move that? And then who's going to pay to recut the sheetrock, refix the other sheetrock, repaint it all? They're like, oh, don't worry, it's included in the original quote from the. They all include rework into their
No
original
way.
quote. And I'm like,
They told you that.
I'm paying
No,
them in
we expect
advance.
to mess up, and we've compensated for it, and you already paid for it, whether we do or not.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, you're paying 20% builder fee on top of that. I'm like,
Oh, wow.
it's mind blown. You know what I mean? And coming from manufacturing, if we have one part of 1,000-piece order get rejected, we do an investigation, 5 why analysis to get to the root cause and do corrective action at the root cause level. And I just couldn't accept this level of waste. And it was just so that combined with seeing the excitement and knowing how powerful I've seen automation be in our business. And just it turned personal to me whenever we lost our home and we were going through this rebuild process it went 40% over budget and took twice as long as it should have.
Yeah.
And that was without even us having change orders and stuff. It turned personal to me. Then I'm like, we have to disrupt the construction industry. Like it's so antiquated. We were building houses the same way as we built them 100 years ago, and maybe some minor improvements, but that's not an overstatement. And
Right.
so I started casting a pretty big vision for Craig, and with All Metals Fabricating, we can design and manufacture the machines here in-house, and we could ramp up, given our automation, we can ramp up as quickly as the market demands. The market couldn't outpace what we could output here in terms of manufacturing the 3D printer. So I started casting a big vision for Craig and talking about the idea of pivoting our investment from the residential real estate fund to starting his new company, Print3d Technologies, which is how it was born. So he had previously MRB Robotics was the name of it. And we combined forces and changed the name to Print3d Technologies. And so, yeah, here we are today.
That is amazing. How does this work? A lot of people probably haven't even heard of like 3D home printing, something that's it's like space age technology or something. And how does this thing work?
Yeah, the easiest way I can describe it is everybody knows soft serve ice cream, right? So that's kind of the easiest way. Where are we going with this? So the concrete comes out of a nozzle, and there's several different types of machines, whether it be a robotic arm or a gantry-based system or one on tracks, but it just comes out of the nozzle and prints in layers the wall system of the house. And so when you say you're 3D printing a house, you're really just 3D printing the wall system. But that takes out framing, sheetrock, which also includes tape bed and texture, and you can actually even remove insulation. You're removing masonry, and then paint too. You don't really have to paint. You still have to paint the cabinetry unless you ordered pre-painted and doors and stuff. But that's 4 to 6 trades, depending on if you still wanted to paint, still wanted to insulate. So you can actually even they're coming out with new dyes impregnated into the mix where you can do different colors in the printing as well.
Wow. So then the concrete actually comes out and it's already colored. So the
It
color
would be,
that you want it.
Yeah. We haven't done any of that yet. There's the mixes that we have are different colors, but not to that level yet. That's a new thing that's just now coming out. You still could paint it. We've not done that on one of ours yet, but you still could paint it if you wanted to. Yeah, and that's the easiest way to describe it is ours is a gantry-based system. So you have this big gantry and the print head moves and prints the house. And and concrete is coming out of the soft serve ice cream.
Wow.
So you're actually getting you think about mold and termites and wind damage and fire, huge right now in California. You're essentially making a product that is far superior. Granted, people will have to adjust to the aesthetics of it. And there's things that we're doing to make it more similar to traditional style with a brick. Right now, we're limited to a bead style, but there are some people out there that have made modifications to their machines to make it print a brick style, which I think will help with market adoption from the general consumer. But you're building a fortress. This thing is windproof, or I'm supposed to say resistant, but wind resistant, fire resistant. And we can actually do some things with the roofing system to make it really Fireproof. So but that adds cost. And right now on the printing side, Print3d Technologies is focused on solving affordable housing. So we're looking to solve the affordable housing crisis. There's 7.4 million affordable houses needed right now in America. We're building 1.3 million total homes per year in America, 8% of which is focused on affordable housing. And the gap is growing, right, year over year. So something has to change. There's other solutions out there like Boxable is a neat product that's coming out. The DFW's had some cool stuff. So it's going to take an army of all of us. And so we don't look at those as competitors, even really other 3D home printing businesses. We don't look as competitors because it's going to take all of us to really help solve this. Really, it's arguably the biggest crisis facing America other than our health and affordable housing. So on the printing side, that's what we're focused on. And then manufacturing side, we do design and manufacture the machines. And so we can support, there's plenty of other verticals that you can find to apply this technology to, whether it be, there's recently 3D printed some army barracks, storm shelters, barns. I think it'll eventually go to commercial as well in the near future, commercial construction. And we'll sell machines to people that want to go even high-end homes. I think that's something that you can make a blue ocean product really and command a higher price point for it because it's a superior product. We're not going to attack it on the contracting printing side, those verticals. We're focused on the affordable housing, but the machine sales, we believe there's tons of other verticals, and we'll probably dabble in it some early on. I think maybe me and you have actually even talked about that.
Yes.
So that you can show the technology that can be used. Certainly early on, we're not going to be saying no to money to print things, and I think it can be dual purpose to your point that shows the possibility to other people, hey, get one of these and go apply it to that sector.
I think it really is fascinating just that you can do that. And concrete construction is not necessarily a new concept, but the ability to do it quickly at a lower cost, I mean, that absolutely is. And the affordable housing market, you mentioned 1.3 million houses built, 8% of that is affordable. A lot of builders have really not sought out that business because it's not profitable. How does 3D home printing reduce those costs and improve efficiency compared to traditional construction and make it where it is fast, it's profitable, and it is a viable business?
Yeah, I think that to your point, it's like my dad always said, you can either make a bunch of money or a little bit of money a whole bunch of times or a bunch of money a fewer times. And manufacturing, we're making a little bit of money a whole bunch of times. And that's kind of the mindset. I think I've built homes, as I mentioned, as from an investor and then personally as well. And you want to catch a bigger lick, right? So it's like you're going to put all that effort in. But you could if you had the right technology, you could take that same mindset and say, I'm going to just have lower margins, but I'm going to rep them out. Boom, boom. And so to answer your question directly, yeah, I mean, we're at 20% less on costs. And it really, the tricky part is when you talk about building, it all comes down to finish out. And so there's not really, even if you interview two builders and have them quote your project, it's like you're going to get different numbers and it really comes all down to finish out. So it's a tricky question for people to ask, but essentially the wall system, especially, it creates more than 20% savings, which gets amortized out over the rest of the build, basically. And we're confident that we can get that number even further down as we get more reps in. We've only had 7 builds. There's a lot you can do with the electrical. We're trying to streamline all trades. So the biggest part of the problem is shortage of trades. And from somebody that's built several homes, getting the trades scheduled on site. And because there's a shortage, now they're charging way, way more. True. And so there's a lot you can do with the electrical to help make that, just basically we want to call it like a plug and play. Like you have an electrician just come out and plug stuff in essentially to oversimplify it. Is the way I'm stating is oversimplifying it. But there's cost savings there that we'll look to get into. We also have a vision of think about a home in a box where a shipping container shows up with everything, the roof, the cabinets, the doors, windows, everything you can need for the whole entire house. You print the house in a week and then you start popping stuff in. Just everything's already on site and you pop the things in. We actually were meeting with an Australian investor the past 2 weeks. He was in town and looking to invest. He's got a commercial construction business over there. And they were building high rises. They actually have these pods, they're bathroom, dining, and kitchen pods. and they
Okay.
drop them into these high rises. And they're nicely done, really nice pods. They drop the pods into the high rise, and you can actually even pop them out and put a damaged one, pop it out and put a new one in. But
Wow.
really, and they have all these different options you can choose from. So that was like, whoa, that's kind of takes our idea of the house in a box on steroids, because you don't have to do the tile. The tile's all done. The window, they even have mirrors hung on these bathrooms. Like the whole thing is
Wow.
done, and they just drop it right in. And it's really about the pre-planning. That's the thing we look to really nail down as planning. But all that to say, we're about, depending on the builder, even to 20% below on cost, and we can expedite the build process by about 40%. So, that's where the real time is money. And then you can really start humming when you have multiple machines out there printing a development. And that's where we haven't experienced that yet. We haven't had that opportunity, but that's where you could really start making up some ground.
That is pretty significant. Ready to future proof your company and scale to new heights? Dive into the ultimate resource designed just for SaaS founders and C suite executives. Champion Leadership Group gives you an unfair advantage in scaling up revenue and outwitting competitors. Imagine solving your biggest scaling headaches and hitting 5, 10, 20 million ARR and beyond with ease. We take away the guesswork and the grunt work and replace it with framework by supporting you with our on demand fractional C suite team, a powerful operating system built into software, and a thriving community of fellow scaling SaaS founders. That's how we make it happen. If you're stuck at your current revenue level, this is your ticket out. Feel like your company is the world's best kept secret? We amplify your success. And hey, if you're already crushing it but too busy to breathe, we got your back. We'll free up 20% of your time in the first month. Now is the time to upgrade from traction to scale. If you're ready to work smarter and not just grind harder, schedule a 10-minute growth brainstorm. Completely free, not a sales call. You can't buy anything on there. And we will pinpoint the number one thing blocking revenue. Visit championleadership.com. That's where leaders evolve and companies transform. Are the machines simple enough that you could ship them like that and people use them? Does it take a lot of special skills and training, or is it something that I'm thinking it's not only the US that has a housing crisis, there's that same thing in other countries. Is that something that could be used in other countries to help them build homes as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. We think we got a problem here in Australia. From his perspective, Australian government has a $10 billion fund that's offered to builders that they would build houses under $330,000. And
Wow.
so yeah, he said there's people with million dollars plus in their bank account living in their cars there because they sold their house and can't buy another one. So to your point, it is a
Mm.
global problem. Our focus is making the machine, and will continue to be as we continue to innovate and design it. One thing we never want to lose sight of is the simplicity of our machine. And that's a core focus of ours. I'd say ours is a lot simpler than a lot of the competitors out there. But yes, that's something that's going to be key to be able to ramp it up and support people worldwide. And we're going to also look to utilize technology with visual glasses where we can see. We have those here with our machines. So if we have an issue on our machine, we throw on the smart glasses, is what they call them, and the technician can see what we're looking at and tell us which buttons to push. So we'll definitely be taking advantage of that technology. We have a augmented reality app that we developed that right now the only application is for, you could pull up your iPhone and look at a lot of land and walk through the house, one of our model homes. You
Wow.
can walk through it on your phone, but we want to utilize that technology. And this is part of what we're seeking to raise capital for is use that technology to train trades and people training on setting up the machine. So making it an augmented reality. Of course, you have your manuals and stuff like that too, but utilize technology as much as we can to make it that hurdle be able to be overcome. Even if we even look at Australia, like the time difference, just trying to sync up calls is a challenge with
Sure.
this investor. And you definitely want to be able to use all the technology you can.
I think that's brilliant. It's a great use case for augmented technology, whether that's in a manufacturing plant or whether it is on site, to be able to put on glasses and it walks you through step by step and you can actually see it. Here's, you do this
Yeah.
next, something went wrong. Here's the thing to check. Here's how you clear the paper jam.
Yeah.
It absolutely brilliant. It's a great use case for that and makes it much more accessible in places where it's harder to get to, or maybe they don't have as many skilled trades. Yep. This is a way to develop that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. You mentioned investors. Yeah, has it been bootstrapped so far? Are you looking for investors? How have you thought about raising capital at this point? And what are investors? What's been their reaction?
Yeah, so to date, Craig and All Metals Fabricating have self-funded the whole thing. We're invested about 1.5 total, and we just started raising capital. I guess it's been about 5 weeks ago. We just finally got our
Okay.
deck. It took way longer getting the deck together and everything than I
Always
was.
does.
Yeah, I thought we'd be raising capital last fall, but yeah, so we're finally underway with that. We got some momentum, particularly with this Australian guy that's looking pretty seriously. We're going into due diligence now that he was here and he's going back and going to dig into that. But yeah, we're looking to raise $3 million. First time I've invested in a lot of deals. I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I've invested in quite a few VC deals and just really a lot of everything. But this is my first time on the other side of the table, and it's a humbling experience. Fortunately, I have a great network and some great partners. And yeah, so we'll see how it goes.
I'm sure it helps having a CFO and CPA background as well, being able
Yes, sir.
to kind of put that together and understand what's a good deal, what's not, and it really having a very different understanding than somebody that's just a technician or somebody, and I say just, that is a technician or has a technical background or a sales and marketing background. It's another tool, and I think something that's a lot of times overlooked, especially when going out to do a capital raise.
Yeah, having an accounting background, it's like the language of business, and so it certainly is such a huge advantage. And I think I think a challenge for me, honestly, will be we're doing a VC style raise, but some of those that have gone before us, I think that in this industry, particularly, really all, but we think about 3D printers and how much those machines cost and everything, heavy capex investment,
Right.
and you run in the venture space. I think a lot of times it's like force the product to market rather, and see if if they accept it or shut it down, right? And if it's not accepted and doesn't grow, can't scale quickly, and that's just not in my DNA. Like I think that I want to run a profitable business, and so that's something we've wrestled through a lot. Is we want to be responsive to the market, and because of All Metals, and we can ramp up. Like we don't have to go force this to the market. Like we can be responsive, and then when it turns on, when municipalities start accepting this style of construction, we can start cranking those machines out by the day. And so that's something that is a little bit different in the way of a traditional VC. While we are doing a VC raise, we're not necessarily going to run it like a VC type of business, if that makes sense.
It does. And you mentioned municipalities. Is that something that's approved most places? Or what are the biggest hurdles to getting that widespread adoption of 3D printed housing?
That is hands down the biggest hurdle. So right now, cities pioneers get arrows in their back, right? So you got government bodies like nobody wants to sign off on some plans that they don't know how to inspect, they don't really know anything about. And there's been a few cities adopt it. Austin is very progressive. There's a suburb down in Houston now, and some I think one in Colorado, maybe one in California. But right now, we're limited to rural areas. So just this year, there's a new ICC committee that I think what it's going to take is this, where a third party comes in and says, this is what's acceptable. And this is how you like some outside body that's saying, okay, they're the fall guy now, right? For the municipalities, that is. And so we're really excited. That's just kicking off. I think this month will be their first meeting and establish some regulatory guidelines around this. But it took us, Craig, I think he called my business partner, I think he called like 100 or more engineers to get his first set of plans signed off on. And then months later, one finally called him back and was like, hey, I just hired a guy from Iran who's familiar with this and can do the plans. This was back in 2020, 2021. I mean,
Wow.
that just goes to show you like, but now, there's there's more exposure to it. So there's more engineers that are willing to sign off on the plans. So you still have to have that sign off in the rural areas, but it's not going to, they don't have the regulations controlling like a city does. So that's the biggest hurdle, I think. I would say then next would probably be market adoption by general consumer of houses. And it's just a different style looking house. I always say that the people that like modern contemporary architecture is a smaller sliver. I would guess it's 10 to 20% of people. And this, I think, falls in that. I think there's some things like I mentioned earlier with the brick style that we're looking to do that would make it more appealing to people in traditional architecture that like a traditional architecture. But I think that's the next thing. Fortunately, with the niche that we're going after, affordable housing, that's not something they're going to really be too particular about, the general consumer. They'll be happy to get a home and have one that's safe and sustainable.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a good place to start out and really prove the market. And just like you mentioned earlier, the materials
Mhm.
far better than wood for being fireproof for termites. That's a huge issue here in North Texas, East Texas. There's termites everywhere.
Yeah.
And so that's always an issue, but they don't eat concrete. So it's just, that's, just another thing. Tornadoes, big deal here.
Yeah.
But what better than concrete? And you
You
think
look at,
about coastal construction as well.
oh yeah, for sure. Coastal's huge, and mold. And really in the affordable housing space, I mean, a lot of the mental like issues that are go on, like people don't know it, but mold causes my wife, her health totally deteriorated. She's an extrovert. She wouldn't even want to go out in public because she couldn't remember people's names,
Wow.
was getting anxious all the time. And it can be serious. And a lot of these places that people live in it's poorly constructed, and mold's a big issue. But another thing is you look at, there's one house left standing in Malibu after the fires here recently in California, and it was a concrete house. Granted, like you mentioned earlier, it's not the 3D home printed, but it was the cinder block style, which is a lot more expensive of a house to build. Whereas you compare this, it's like equal or less. And we also look at the fires in Hawaii several years ago. There's one house left standing. It was concrete. And so in both situations, what a powerful testament. Insurance companies should be the ones investing in us, right?
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah.
But it is a lot more common than probably a lot of people think, is because you do have the center block, you have a lot of the commercial buildings, the tilt wall construction. It's
Totally.
all concrete. And so it's just a different way of putting it together, significantly faster and less cost. But the
Absolutely.
end product is the same or better. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's in a lot of ways structurally, it's certainly better, right? Aesthetic is up to a person's opinion. And you could say, oh, this is not better because I don't like this style. I think overcoming the bead piece of it is huge. And that's going to be our main focus once we get some more capital. We're looking at printing a 4-inch brick style
Okay.
and then figuring out how we can make that. So we can smooth it out now. We can actually take the hose and spray concrete on the exterior and do a stucco finish currently. Once again,
Makes
we've been
sense.
focused on affordable housing. So it's this tension that we're living in of what's attractive. Like I need to do just like a custom home that's sexy so that I can show the sex appeal of what we can do. And we've got a couple of those that we're bidding on right now, but won't be our main focus. It's just something that we need to show the market, hey, what's possible. So right now, currently, we can make it a smooth wall finish, but we're focused on automation. So that's a manual process.
Yeah.
We're even looking at how we can automate that, not the spraying, but can we attach a brush style to the print head to where it comes back? But currently there's a good option out there where you do a 4-inch brick, which cuts your print time down in half also, which we love.
That's even better.
So that's something we're looking to add as a retrofit to our current system. We already have engineering working on that. And as soon as we get some more capital, we'll be able to infuse that into it. But then taking it a step further, nobody's done this yet. How do you take it a step further and automate smoothing that out to make it a nice stucco type finish?
Yeah, there's so many things that you can chase as an entrepreneur, and really focusing in on that market and not chasing the shiny objects. I think that's something that's very difficult to do.
Especially for us entrepreneurs, us visionaries.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, what's one lesson you've learned from running a family business, launching a tech startup that every founder needs to know?
From the startup perspective, like you said earlier, everything takes a lot longer than you think, man. And I think that that there's a book called Gap versus Gain Mentality, and I think as business owners, this is something we have to constantly remind ourselves of, is to focus on the gains instead of the gaps. And what I mean by that is, as a business owner, you're always thinking about ideal state. What's the ideal state? And even applies in your personal life, which goes even worse at home, but in the marriage, that is. But you always looking to improve. How do I get, so that's part of your job requirement. It's like, How are we getting better? How are we getting better? How are we? So that's focusing on the gains, the gap rather. Here's where I want to be. Here's where we are. And the problem with a lot of us is like we get there and we don't even celebrate the gain, but instead shifting your mindset to focusing on the gains. So that would be my advice. It's like, one, it's going to take longer. Focus on the gains, because if you're constantly, as an owner, you're always focused on the problems like that. That's what your job, you're paid to do, is solve big, hairy problems. And so as long as you're focused on the problems instead of you're never going to be content. And so you have to train your mind to focus on the gains that you experience along the way and not the gap to where you want to be. Because once you get to that gap, you're just going to be looking at the next gap anyways. So
Right. What's your biggest gain so far since you started this project?
Oh, that's a great question. I think last year, us printing a house for $100,000 was a huge win. That proved we got the idea from Icon, was having this contest where they were offering $1 million to somebody that could design a home that could be built for $100,000. And we just said, let's just go do it. And,
I love that.
We should have applied. I don't know if they would have accepted our offer, but yes, that's a huge deal. We came in at 105. We think we can get it down to low to mid 90s now. And so that was a huge accomplishment for us.
That really is. Where can people learn more about you and about Printed Technologies online?
Yeah, so go to print3d technologies.com. And so we say printed, but it's actually spelled print3d technologies.com. You can also check us out at ametals.com. So it's All Metals Fabricating's website is ametals.com.
Outstanding. We'll make sure and link both of those in the show notes. Lance, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for being on SaaS Fuel.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Thanks to everyone for listening too.
Thanks again, Lance, for coming on the show and sharing your journey and insights. Absolutely incredible what they're doing over there. And just the thought process. Think about that, to be able to create not only the 3D printing technology and the machinery and manufacture that, but then an app with augmented reality, put the glasses on and see how it's supposed to work, troubleshoot it. This is just next level stuff. I love it when people think big and take those thoughts and turn them into action. And that's exactly what Lance has done. Cool. You can learn more about Lance and Printed Technologies at print3dtechnologies.com. So it's printed, but they got that 3 like the E. So Print3D Technologies, printedtechnologies.com. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to check us out on YouTube as well. It's at Champion Leadership. Full video episodes, outtakes, shorts, training, lots more resources over there for you founders on YouTube. And thought leaders share. If you're listening to this, I bet you are a thought leader. So share this episode with someone you know who's always on the hunt for their next insight. And maybe they want to think bigger too. Everyone who shares this week gets a talking cactus that tells dad jokes at random intervals, because who doesn't want one of those in their office? What do fractional COOs actually do? And could hiring one be the smartest move for your growing business? Joshua Mong has helped dozens of companies streamline operations, build process maps, and scale with less chaos. He'll join us next time to break down how small businesses can think bigger without losing control. And how do you go from being buried in paperwork to building a company that automates it all? I love this. Richard Walker, CEO of Quick and the host of the Customer Wins podcast, will be here sharing his journey from financial advisor to tech entrepreneur and how his platform is reshaping the way the biggest names in the industry handle forms. It's way better than you even think. So I will see you next time. And as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/saasfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.